Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to the ROKER RAPPORT podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen as we look ahead to a third successive game on the road for the lads due to the postponement of the Millwall home game, as we also try to follow up an impressive performance in midweek against Reading at Watford this weekend. And to give us all the latest on our next opponents ahead of our trip to Hertfordshire, you may recognise this person from years that he spent on our screens as part of Sky Sports, or recently from his work in The Athletic. But we're very pleased to have the company of Adam Leventhal. Hello, Adam.
How's it going, Chris? Good to be here.
Yeah, welcome to the ROKER RAPPORT podcast. How are you keeping?
Yeah, all is well. In life away from Watford, all is well. But Watford is, it has been. It's a bit of a labour of love at the moment because it has been an up and down time, and I'm obviously. You know all about that as a Sunderland fan, and you're on the up at the moment. Watford are just trying to find their feet in this crazy league that is the Championship, which we're back in once again.
Well, it's interesting because you know that sort of tone's kicked in already, which I'll kind of touch on to. But there's only 1 point. There's only 1 point between the clubs, but we'll come back to that because I kind of been looking at what you've been doing for the Athletic recently. You know, I read a piece a few days ago about the transfer window because obviously another one's just closed, and you wrote about what goes on behind the scenes. And when I read that, it kind of opened my eyes a bit to the sheer chaos that happens around the end of the window, because you hear reporters talking about it, but sometimes you kind of wonder, is it all that chaotic? But I mean, reading your piece, I mean, it must be an absolute minefield for the likes of yourself on what to report and what not to report.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you know, once the season ends, you know that obviously the transfer rumours are going to start. But you do have that sort of period when there is a little bit where everyone in football just sort of does relax for a little bit, and maybe that only goes to maybe 1 or 2 days. But then the madness really does kick in, and you know the purpose of that piece was really to highlight some of the stories that go on behind the scenes and have a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. And often some of the things that you hear and you talk about with contacts and the messages that you receive and the screenshots that are sent sometimes from agents or football clubs or other contacts that sometimes we can't actually report because, you know, either they're sensitive because they might compromise a source, or, you know, you can't stand them up in the way that we like to do it, especially on The Athletic, and at the very least, double source a story. So you've only got one side of the story, and maybe another side of the story is denying the existence of this situation. But yeah, I found it fascinating pulling it all together because it's not just my own stories. A lot of them, you know, I did have experience of myself, but, you know, just sort of drawing it together from the Athletic staff as well, because there is so much that goes on and so much that people don't see or hear. And it's very difficult to decipher. It's draining to report on a lot of the time, but it is something that I do quite enjoy. But I do quite enjoy it when it's finished, just to have a little bit of a breather and you can actually concentrate on the football, even though it is difficult if you're a Watford fan.
Yeah, I mean, just reading that piece, I mean, I couldn't get over some of the kind of crazy information that gets sent through to reporters.
Yeah.
And, you know, you've mentioned in the piece MRI scans and agents trying to get deals during, you know, getting involved in them during Zoom calls. I mean, you know, the way you talk about deals in that piece, is that a case that it's the majority of deals have some sort of quirk, or do the majority of them go through smoothly and you just report, yep, that's happened?
It's difficult, really. I think that there is so much work that goes into so many deals, even the most straightforward ones, you know, that there can be almost an agreement on the three key sides of the transfers, you know, between the two clubs and obviously the player then wanting to go to that new club. But still, there are a lot of logistical things that also have to fall into place, be it the travel logistics, if it's going to be a last minute deal, or obviously the medical examinations which need to take place, the personal terms that need to be agreed, the fee that needs to be agreed between the two clubs. So there are so many different moving parts and negotiation that has to occur on all of those points. So the thing that really does sort of interest me from both sides of it as well is that, a lot of the time you'll hear fans say, "Man, I don't believe it. It's not true." And in my experience as a journalist, you don't write something down unless you are confident that it is true. And when people talk about, it's just a rumor, I don't like the word rumor because it's sort of the enemy of journalism, really. I find it almost insulting at times that people would just say, "Oh, just rumors, just rumors." Yes, there can just be things that people put out there as tittle tattle, and sometimes agents can try and sort of put little stories out there to journalists that might want to carry those stories. But if it's a rumor, your job as a journalist is to find out whether it is true or not. And if it is not true, there's no point reporting on it. But if there is some grain of truth in it and it is worth building on, then it's almost your responsibility, if it's on your patch or if it's a big story or whatever it is, to make sure that you explain it in the fullest of terms. And that's why I think, the transfer window in particular, it appeals to journalists who have a tendency to be a little bit like a dog with a bone and won't let things go. But then for some other journalists, it's the worst type of journalism where you're having to chase everything and be really, really persistent with it. And that's fine. There's horses for courses. But I sort of do fall into the dog with a bone sort of journalist where I really want to try and find out exactly what's going on. And some journalists will just want to only report on things when they are, a done deal. And that's fine, but that's a bit of an open goal, really. It's, anyone can do that. I think that fans nowadays, with the analysis and the scrutiny that we see, are interested in the different stages and the peaks and troughs that can happen in those negotiations. So, yeah, I do find it fascinating, and some of the weird things that do happen. People turning up for medicals and then being told to go home, or social videos being done for announcements and then the deal falling through, or whatever it is. Cristiano Ronaldo being offered around to various different clubs. Who would have thought that a couple of years ago, that one of the greatest players in the world is almost being, on a sort of a junket with various clubs around the world. It's strange things happen, but I do find it fascinating. And I think more and more people do nowadays.
I mean, well, especially, just being a Sunderland fan on the Sunderland message boards, you tend to get those rumours through that so-and-so's having a medical at, Sunderland Hospital, or, you have, people being spotted in local hotels and things like that. But, I mean, on the subject of the transfer deadline day, because, you were the face of the athletics coverage, the one that's just closed. But you started working with Sky Sports all the way back in 2003, which was about, I think it was the year before or maybe the year after, when kind of the transfer windows as we know it came into play. But I mean, how did you see that coverage of deadline day evolve from being on the inside of it? Because I mean, almost 20 years later, it's this huge event on the calendar now.
Yeah, it really did sort of gather pace, actually. Yeah, during the period of time that I was there. The thing that I always remember about it is that the newsroom would really come alive when it was on deadline day, and I would always feel like, I wish it would be like this every day. Everyone was sort of really bang on it, and, there was extra things going on, and everyone was really sort of chasing hard on stories, and there was a real energy to everything. And obviously, it sort of hit a ceiling, didn't it, really? Or a little bit of a comedic, perhaps, veering on the slightly dangerous and slightly, well, I don't know, post-watershed worlds of various things being shoved in various ears and things like that, and dolls being held up in the background of reporters, and that did really sort of change the whole dynamic of things. And then I think it did lose a little bit in terms of being a TV spectacle, when just purely down to the safety of reporters being outside training grounds or football grounds, it just wasn't safe anymore. So reporters had to be inside and in safe spaces, whether that's inside a stadium or inside a training ground, and it lost a little bit of that buzz. But for a time, it was incredible. I think also that what also has changed since I was at Sky Sports News as a reporter and then as a presenter as well, that fans have at their disposal so much more information that was only really accessible to us at Sky Sports News prior to, Twitter really taking off. Now fans can see the work and the thinking almost of so many journalists on Twitter and various social platforms, even YouTube and things like that can do things live. So I think over time it's maybe sort of lost its sort of sting, I suppose, as a solely TV spectacle. But when it was only the yellow ties and only Jim White and only us at training grounds and all that sort of stuff, it was fantastic. But I think now there are so many different ways to cover it, and the demands are from fans saying, well, no, we really want to know what's going on. We really want to know why the deal fell through, precisely what happened. And, we can now cover that in a completely different way on the Athletic. But obviously, the central point of it is still whether someone's signed on the dotted line, which is a saying I don't like, but effectively that's basically what it comes down to, isn't it? That, is he going there? Yes, good. Right. Well, let's kick on and let's play football rather than talking about the business side of the game, I suppose.
Are you enjoying being able to focus on Watford a bit more and writing about them on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I am, of course. It's been a sort of quite a journey, actually, from starting in 2019 and making the transition from myself, as pretty much solely a broadcaster. I'd done some writing for books and had a publishing company as well, which is still going as well. So I was sort of au fait with writing, but writing regularly and writing in depth and getting back to sort of true sort of investigative journalism on certain issues has been really, really good, and has been a step that I wasn't necessarily expecting to make. If you'd asked me sort of 5 years ago whether that's something that I would necessarily go into, I probably wouldn't have thought that it would be. But I've really enjoyed it. It's been a challenge. I've sort of, learning as I do it and finding new techniques and different ways of working, and just it feels like a real journalistic role that I've got, and that is not only on Watford but also the broader topics as well, which I've covered, like the transfer window piece and things like that. So yeah, it's been challenging, but it has been a sort of a new chapter in my career, which I've actually really, really enjoyed, and I continue to this day.
Yeah, and you mentioned the publishing actually, and I think that's the Tales series of books, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which I know you were an author on the Watford books, and it covers a handful of clubs, including Sunderland. I've got those on the bookshelf, right behind me as we speak. But and I think you came up to the Stadium of Light for the launch of one of the Sunderland books. Is that right?
Of all of them, yeah. And I think it's pertinent to say before we go on and talk about the Tales from the Red and Whites, I've got such an affinity for Sunderland and for the other clubs that we've worked on. And it was such a sad loss to have lost Lance Hardy. He was such a gifted writer, and he was our go-to man, our editor for the Sunderland books, the 3 Sunderland books that we did. And he was, ably assisted by Graham Anderson and Rob Mason, who, Sunderland fans will know from being such a, great historian over the years. But Lance was the guy that we first met when, we wanted to do books outside of Watford. And it came as such a shock when we lost him. And I just, I've got such fond memories of him doing such great work and having such passion for it, and getting all the former players, the former managers, captains and things like that from Sunderland, and I really loved coming up. We did a few events up at the Stadium of Light with Peter Reid was up there for one of them. A whole collection of captains and players, and yeah, it's been something that we haven't done more of late. We've done the 3 volumes of Tales from the Red and Whites, and we did books with Watford and Norwich and Leeds as well. We also published a book about Unai Emery. So that's sort of been put on the back burner a little bit, but it's still bubbling along. But yeah, I always look. It's funny. Also, we did the Nick Barnes match books as well. His great commentary notes when Watford and Sunderland were in the same division, and it's good to be back in the same division once again, because obviously I've sort of seen the fall down, and everyone's watched the documentaries and seen the drama and all that sort of stuff, and there's been so much that's happened. But it's good to see Sunderland back on the up as well, because I know how much of a massive club they are, and although I don't necessarily wish them all the best on Saturday, I do like to see them in general terms back in the mix, up nearly among the big boys, but not quite yet.
Just to focus on Watford and kind of more specifically your relationship with Watford, I mean, how far does the love of the club go back, and how did you end up following Watford?
It goes back all the way since I was a little kid, and I got my footballing allegiance from my mum. She grew up in Watford. That's where my grandparents live, and I was sort of indoctrinated from a young age. And earliest memories of the cup final, the FA Cup final in 1984, and gradually started going on a more regular basis, and having a season ticket, traveling there by myself, going with my my mum or my grandfather and things like that. Often going up by myself, and I lived in North London, and then we would sort of I'd travel up, get the bus, this sort of really weird route, and spend ages going and traveling and home and away and things like that. And obviously then, whilst I was working initially in radio, I wasn't necessarily able to go as much as I would have liked. But yeah, once you're in, you follow them all the way. So yes, ever since I was a kid, and now I'm writing about them as well.
What an amazing time to start off being a Watford fan. Cup finals, you wait for cup football, top flight football.
That's the thing. It was an incredible time, but I was too young to really experience it. I was born in '79, and that was when they kicked on with the rise under Graham Taylor, and I wasn't old enough to really know what was going on in terms of finishing second and getting into the UEFA Cup and being an established first division side that clubs in the division actually feared, not necessarily simply just down to the football that we were playing, because we did also have some amazingly gifted players like John Barnes and Luther Blissett and so many others in different ways. But I really started going when they were on the the doldrum years in the first division and maybe drifting down to the third tier, as your boys have been recently. So yeah, it's funny now because obviously Watford have been in the Premier League for 5 seasons and then been up and down. But I always think of Watford as a side that's second or third division. So I always still feel like we're living La Vida Loca when we're in the Premier League. It doesn't feel like we should really belong there. And then some fans who are much younger have only really known, under the Pozzo regime since 2012, being real challengers and being in the top division. And I'm like, just you got to be careful, because it's not always going to be like this, and it's not always been like this. So I've got a different perspective on things than some other fans.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I mean, you had that gap between those Graham Taylor days, and then you had a 5-year period between 2015 and 2020 where Watford had 5 successive seasons in the Premier League, which was the most successful period since those Graham Taylor days in the 1980s. I mean, there's been a promotion and relegation since, but I mean, surely, it's been a good time to be a Watford fan over the last 5-10 years.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it has, and I think since 2012, since the Pozzo takeover, it's transformed the club from being one like many others to something that did have a USP and did have a competitive advantage due to being able to obviously farm in players from a sister club like Udinese, which I know rubbed people up the wrong way a little bit initially, but I think they were trailblazers almost in a way, and followed by not only some smaller clubs that now have sister clubs, but some of the big guns as well, even like Manchester City. You think of the football ownership group like the City Football Group and things like that. The Pozzos were doing this since the mid-90s, when they had Udinese initially, then they branched out to Granada, and then obviously they went on to Watford, and then they got rid of Granada. But they have obviously had an amazing scouting network. And I think maybe, when people are successful and they have something a little bit different, other clubs try and mimic that and match that, and then maybe sometimes exceed that. And I think Watford, initially they were completely different, and maybe now it's sort of caught up with them a little bit, and they need to try and evolve, and they need to try and reinvent themselves a little bit. But going back to the point that you made, it has been a journey that has had great success in terms of staying in the Premier League, which is a success on its own. It's had some amazing moments even outside the Premier League with that. The Deeney goal that was scored against Leicester is just incredible. It's something that every May, I can't remember, May the 12th or whatever it is Deeney Day. I can't remember exactly what the date is, but it always pops up every year. And you always watch it and you always get goosebumps. And I was behind the goal that he scored that goal in.
Brilliant.
So I was there, I saw it, I felt it. It was the most incredible moment I've ever had watching football. And it's sometimes it doesn't need to be the lifting of the cup or the winning of the league or whatever. It can be a goal that saves you from relegation or a goal that takes you into a final like that are the ones that you remember the most. And there's been plenty of those under the Pozzos, aside from staying in the Premier League or getting to a cup final or things like that. So yeah, it's been an incredible journey. It's a little bit more turbulent at the moment than fans would like.
Because you've just been touching on it there, because I mean there's been a lot of talk at Sunderland recently about philosophy and having a plan to keep the club moving in a certain direction regardless of the man in charge. Because I was having a look at the number of times Watford have changed manager, and in the 10 years since the summer of 2012, since the takeover, Watford have had 16 managers, and in the 10 years before that they had 6. So, I mean, you were talking about Watford kind of creating their own kind of USP, but, I mean, do you think they've kind of changed football a little bit? Do you think they've exposed maybe a myth that things, need to be long-term and stable? Because they've been pretty successful while they've been doing all that chopping and changing.
They were to a point. I think and this isn't a criticism of being outside the Watford bubble, because I would have thought being outside the Watford bubble is bliss at times because it's not quite as complicated. But what actually sort of changed it a little bit too much and almost set the tone was very, very early on, because they had Gianfranco Zola initially, and he was great. I think he was there for about 18 months or so, which is quite long just in general terms in football, because usually you only get a season nowadays. But then there was a flurry of managers which changed it and turned it from 1 in the course of 18 months to 5 in the course of 18 months almost. So they had Beppe Sannino, then they had Billy McKinley, they had Oscar Garcia, and they had Slavisa Jokanovic, all within the space of a month. So then people were going, well, hang on a minute, what's going on here? But then they did get up into the Premier League with Slavisa Jokanovic, and then they changed it again with Quique Sanchez Flores coming in. And, that really did change the dynamic and the numbers. And that really did sort of make it quite something to scrutinise from, other fans' point of view and journalistically as well. But then after that, they did sort of have it licked, I thought. I thought they did really well. Quique Sanchez Flores did well in that first season, kept them up. Then they thought, right, it's not quite working out with him, but we go all the way to the end of the season. They then brought in Walter Mazzari, who was a different kettle of fish, smoked too many fags, didn't speak the language, was a bit of a miserable git, but eccentric, and he kept Watford in the Premier League. Good, well done. It's not the easiest thing to do. And then they changed again, and they brought in Marco Silva, which again, they've seen him have difficult times of late with Everton in particular in the Premier League. But since he's been at Fulham, it's reminded me of what he was like at Watford. He's got them playing good football. He feels confident. He's got that buzz back again. And he was great to start off with, but then he got his head turned. And ever since then, it's been a little bit like they were on the right path. Then they brought in Javi Gracia, and he was great. He did well. And then they got to the cup final, and what they should have done is try and rebuild at that point and try and reinvest when some players might have been at the top whack in terms of resale value. But they just got it wrong, and then they sacked him, and then they brought Quique back, and then they brought in Nigel Pearson, and then they went down, and then ever since it's just been literally a revolving door. And I think they lost their way. They basically lost their way after maybe Marco Silva, but probably after Javi Gracia, because he was a good guy, and they probably should have just held their nerves, stuck with him in that 2019-20 season. But they got rid of him after, just a handful of games. And ever since then, they've just been chasing their tail, really. And it's been just a bit of a mess, to be brutally honest.
Yeah. And like I said, at the end of that, there's been a couple of years yo-yoing between the Premier League and Championship. And there's been a lot of money spent by Watford on the face of it when you look at the kind of players that they've brought in. So, where do you think Watford's place in the football world is at the moment? And we'll obviously get on to where things stand, a few games into this season. But was there a clear expectation in the summer just gone to bounce straight back to the Premier League following that relegation?
I don't think so. Well, I say that. From my point of view, I don't think it was. I've never thought it was going to be easy getting back up this season, because it has been a mess for probably 3 seasons. So ever since the cup final, 2018-19 was a great year. They did really well. 19-20 was a mess. There was stuff going on in the background. They rallied under Nigel Pearson, but then that also went sour. Then, obviously, you had the COVID season behind closed doors, which I think they profited from basically just playing training games against opposition that were of a lesser standard, just simply because of, being a Premier League team and coming down. They were able to retain a lot of the quality that they had, but it wasn't a particularly happy place. Obviously in the broader world, it wasn't a happy place, but at the club as well, it wasn't hugely vibrant. It was sort of a bit soulless, the whole thing. And they obviously made another, as is their way, they made a managerial change with Vladimir Ivic, who came. He wasn't really sort of bringing much happiness and joy, but he did a decent job. And then Xisco Munoz came in, who was a bundle of fun and love and happiness. And that was what was needed at the time. And then the next season, which was last season, you get up into the Premier League again. You have that short-term approach of, right, let's just bring in a whole new load of players. But it wasn't what was needed. And they've needed a better strategy over the last 3 years. And it's all been too short-term. And that's why, when you look at those seasons, 1920, 2021, 21-22, it's been building up to a point where you need a rebuild. You need to stop, take stock, make changes structurally, approach, culture, all that sort of stuff. And if you don't get back up straight away, that's all right. But football doesn't work like that, especially when you're an owner. And if you're an owner like Gino Pozzo, who wants things his own way and isn't, averse to having a knee-jerk reaction to things at times, as we well know, it doesn't quite fit. Rebuilds and, taking your time, it doesn't work. Especially when you've also got the financial pressure of now only having 2 seasons of parachute payments. And once you get out of the parachute payment zone, we all know you can go south very quickly. You get chewed up by the Championship and spat out, and you can end up in League One. So it's been coming this time, and they haven't quite got a grip of it. They've brought in Rob Edwards, and it's a different approach. Young manager, young British manager, but everything needs to just tally up with the situation that they were in when they came down from the Premier League, because last season was absolutely atrocious. They were never at the races. They had, obviously, Xisco Munoz, nice guy, but maybe not quite at the level that he needed to be. But then you bring in Claudio Ranieri, then you bring in Roy Hodgson, who looked like he just didn't want to be there. And the culture at the club just needed a proper twist and change, and that's going to take time. And fans need to realise that you can't have everything your own way all of the time, and there might need to be a few bumps in the road, and it might be a bit grim, but people that want to come in and change something need to be given time to change it. Need to be given an opportunity to make suggestions and see things coming from the outside in and go, can I do this slightly different? Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's fine, because it hasn't been working for the last few years. So we will see.
Well, we can tell you all about those risks of spiralling down the leagues.
Yeah, well, exactly.
We know all about it. But,
yeah. Well, no. Also, like for example, the last game I saw was at Blackburn, and the most shocking thing that I saw, and I've known people that have played up there and all that stuff, and they've had a lovely time and good fans, good area, good stadium, da 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 da. The most shocking thing in footballing terms was when the attendance came out. It was 11,000, and I thought, wow, 11,000. The ground was pretty much a third full. A section of one end completely empty. It felt like Watford in the olden days, when if you had a league game, it would be a decent one. It would be 11,000. If there was a big club coming to town, you might get 13. But in the cups, in the early rounds of the, you'd be in the LDV vans or whatever the trophy was back then. You get 4 or 5 or 6,000 against Southend and things like that. It felt old school, and it was a warning of just be careful, because you can be a big club, you can win the bloody thing, you can win the Premier League, but you can still end up down in the doldrums. And it was a huge sort of reality check for any Watford hierarchical member that actually bothered to turn up to the game, to just be careful what you wish for and make sure you have a plan and be careful, because it can go to pot. And that's, I know obviously we've got the example of Sunderland as well, which we can talk about, but they had a recent example of Blackburn as well, and it should be fresh in their mind. So yeah, I hope they paid attention.
Yeah, apologies, Adam. You had my mind wandering to former names of the trophy, like the Sherpa Vans and the Freight Rover and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, I could go on all day about that. But just to go back to your point about it taking time, because, obviously looking at the story of the season so far, I mean, from the outside, it looks like a bit of a mixed bag. Drawn 4 out of the first 9, midweek going down 2-0 at Blackburn. But I watched Rob Edwards make his post-match comments after the midweek game at Blackburn, and he was talking about fans getting angry. He was already talking about turning things around, looking at his tone and his body language. It didn't look great. I also read your piece in The Athletic, and that to me, just from the outside read, is almost a plea to Watford fans to say, give the guy time. It's a big job. But it's clear, from all of those signs, that the fans are unhappy at the start that they've made this season.
Yeah, they are. But as I said before, it's been building. So they've not got much credit in the bank, just in terms of their own enjoyment in things. The confidence levels are low. They've been worn down by the last 2 Premier League seasons. They didn't get to see the last Championship season. So they want to feel a bit of joy. They've had to go through another transfer window of potentially big players leaving. They're not necessarily happy with how the club has recruited, whether they've reinvested in the right areas, whether they've invested in young players that other clubs have snapped up and brought into their own sides. And you just think, well, why didn't Watford go and sign him? He's brilliant. Why not? Because they've got a different approach. And that's why the frustration is there. But there is a frustration not only I think there's a sympathy for Rob Edwards, definitely, because he's being the sort of manager that Watford have wanted and needed for quite some time. Someone that can articulate themselves, someone that's familiar with the English game from having played it. That's not a xenophobic criticism of foreign coaches, because they can do just as well. However, that's what Watford have wanted, just a little bit more. And it's a frustration at the way that the club is being run in comparison with how it was in the past, and the fact that there hasn't been that evolution, there hasn't been the investment in certain areas of the side, and it's difficult. It's really difficult for a young manager in their first sort of big job. Did well at Forest Green, but in a bigger job, Watford aren't a big club, but a bigger job, to come in and deal with all of this political nonsense that goes on. And I just hope that, if things don't go to plan against Sunderland, going into international break, which is basically a Pozzo sacking zone, which it has been over the years, that they just take stock of the situation and go, look, come on, let's just chill out for a minute and think about this. Because Scott Duxbury, who's the chairman and the CEO, he's gone on record And there wasn't much communication last season, but he's gone on record this year saying, we will back Rob Edwards come hell or high water. Okay, fine. Well, if you're going to do that and then you sack him, what does that say about you, about the hierarchy, about the running of the club? It sort of almost makes the whole thing a little bit untenable. And you just think, well, why should anyone have any faith in anything that's being done if you're going to say something like that and then completely change tack? Especially when Rob Edwards has been trying to get a grip of a new squad, and there's been a huge amount of change. There's been about 15 players that have left, and new nationalities coming in and bringing in loan players, and there's been injured players as well. He hasn't had them all at his full disposal yet. You have to give him time. Give him time all the way to the World Cup. At the very least, give him the whole bloody season. You know, just let's just see what happens and chill out. And stop thinking that changing the head coach is the answer. Maybe just do a bit of introspection and think, oh, all these coaches seem to be leaving all the time. I keep on sacking all these coaches. Is it them or is it me? You know, you would just hope that maybe one day the penny drops, but it's been going on for far too long to expect that to happen.
But again, from the outside, it says to me a lot about the expectation at the club, because looking at the table, I mean, there's only a 2-point gap between Watford and third place in the table after only 9 games.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, as much as, you know, social media isn't going to be the best barometer, I've seen a lot of criticism of all the performances of Watford this season. I've seen they've only scored 9 goals in 9 games as well. So, I mean, have the performance levels been part of the criticism?
It's been disjointed. There have been moments when they've played really well, but they have had those complications of trying to embed a new style of play, but not knowing which players were going to be remaining at the club, especially someone like Ismail Assar, who's a great example, who traditionally and throughout his time at Watford has been playing, you know, outside right forward. But if you think, right, well, he's going to be leaving, I'm probably going to go and I might want to try something different. I want to play with a front 2 and then play with a back 3. Well, if you want to plan for that, but then you end up keeping Sarr, who normally plays on the right, okay, well, right, if he's going to stay, then we're going to have to play him centrally. But we've just signed another couple of strikers just in case one of our other strikers leaves. So it's been a puzzle that has been not even out of the box. It's still in the box, the puzzle. And he's not really been able to put it together in any clear way as yet. You know, and injuries as well. You know, Ismail Assar got injured against Blackburn. He won't be playing against Sunderland. I wouldn't have thought. We'll find out in the press conference. But it's been very, very difficult to hang together performances tallied with the recruitment as well. Like not having to play your Player of the Year last year, which was a joke in itself because no one deserved to be a Player of the Year. But Hassan Kamara, who came in from Nice in January, he ended up winning Player of the Year because he played half decent. But he was then having to play on the right-hand side as a right wing-back because they had Ken Sema playing on the left-hand side, but they didn't trust the new right-back that they had brought in exchange for Kiko Femenia. It's just been an absolute sort of mishmash of signings. And it's not ready to be judged yet. And that's the long and short of it. If you make the decision to judge the situation that he has been dealt or the cards that he has been dealt, then I think you're completely and utterly wrong. But then they will argue, well, you know, Vincent Kompany's been able to do it at Burnley, you know, after a relegation. Dean Smith's been able to do it at Norwich after a relegation. But then the counter argument to that is, well, Norwich are probably a better run club. And Burnley have actually reinvested in the areas that they needed. And they've got a clear strategy. Right, we're going to invest in young, high caliber young players from around Europe. And we're going to tap into our experienced coach, you know, not necessarily only in managerial terms, but in terms of playing as well. And that's not necessarily something that Watford do with Rob Edwards. They will still give him players that they have signed and then only give him a modicum of influence on the players that he might want to sign. The likes of Keenan Davis, who was also injured initially, but will be a player. I think he's brilliant. I wouldn't be surprised if he scores against Sunderland. Hamza Chowdhury, who's just getting back into playing on a regular basis. Courtney House came in, but he's been injured. Left centre-back, which Watford needed. It's just you can tell from my sort of my I don't know, the sort of when I say all this stuff, I just think, well, how can you make a decision? How can you make a decision on whether someone should stay or go based on the fact that they've not even been able to have that jigsaw out of the box yet to even start to put it together? So, yeah, I'm just hoping from our point of view, from a Watford point of view, I'm just hoping for a day when it clicks, just for a day, for a game, and they win. And then we can just go away and enjoy our international break and get back to it afterwards. And I would just make a plea to the Sunderland fans. Just if you could just give us this one. Just one. You've had your impressive win against Reading, away win. You can just sort of treat it. If you've stayed down as well with the team, which is obviously unlikely because you've got jobs and need to go to work. But if, you've had your good Southern win for this period. Just let us have a 1-0 if you don't mind, please.
Well, I mean, all the sounds that you're making are all kind of slightly negative. As I said, listening to Rob Edwards, it's negative. But I mean, I was taking a look earlier, and I mean, the home form, 3 wins from 4. I mean, that suggests you've got a kind of a good home form, and you've been doing well in Vicarage Road. But I mean, all these kind of negative thoughts that are coming in. I mean, there's maybe potential for the fans to get on their back if Sunderland start keeping the ball and frustrating the home fans. I mean, how do you see the game going on Saturday?
Well, I haven't seen much of Sunderland, I must admit. And when I heard that both strikers that you had been budgeting on playing were missing, I was thinking, oh, well, this is shaping up nice. And then I saw Barcelona playing at Reading, scoring one of the greatest goals ever scored. And I thought, hang on a minute. Watford have been struggling against everyone that can play football. QPR, for example, they did really well. They even struggled against West Brom. And West Brom aren't doing very well. But yeah, you're right. At home, they have pulled it out of the bag. And the fans have been on side. And there have been some good wins against Sheffield United, against Burnley, against Middlesbrough as well in the last minute. So it's just about whether they can start strong, because what they've been struggling with at the moment is conceding the first goal and having to get themselves back into games. And they never really managed to get back into it against Blackburn. And they've sort of got into the habit of slow starts. And I just hope that the potential negativity or tension that might be felt not only in the dugout going into an international break, but in the fan base as well, doesn't transmit itself onto the pitch, because they have got it in them. They have got some players that are gifted and perhaps do belong at a higher level, perhaps, like João Pedro. When he's on form, he wasn't at Blackburn. When he's on form, he is an outstanding player. But if they're facing up against an opposition that are confident in the way that they're playing, have a style of play, can pop the ball around a corner, give and goes, know where they're supposed to be playing, what they're supposed to be doing, like we saw Sunderland do at Reading, then, Watford have got a pretty shaky defence that aren't particularly full of confidence, that have been ground down over the last few years. And you will get chances. And you may, well, if you play like you did against Reading, then I'm sure you'll score goals. But Watford, I hope, have hit their rock bottom a little bit in this early stage of the season against Blackburn, and I'm hoping that the only way is up, and that they have, rather than fragmented in the dressing room and it started to sort of turn toxic after that game. I hope it's been the one of like, come on, boys, we can't do this again, and they're on it. And if they are on it, then they have got the ability to do very well. But that is the unknown. If they start as they have been in recent games, then Sunderland will have a good afternoon.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So we've got a young team, and we're enjoying watching them. But I think consistency is one of the big question marks for our team, because they're so young, and a lot of them are having their first season in the Championship. So it'll be interesting to see how we get on against a bunch of players who've just come down.
Yeah, but don't get. That's what John Dale Thomason was saying. after Blackburn won, and it was almost as if they'd beaten the Harlem Globetrotters. And it's like, hang on a minute, look, Watford are no great shakes. So yeah, if it works to Watford's advantage and Sunderland give Watford a lot of respect, then fine. But I would have thought the analysts in the Sunderland department would have watched the game and gone, we could do well here, because there is certainly weaknesses in that Watford side. But I hope at the same time, Rob Edwards, and I'm sure, look, Rob Edwards is a good guy, good coach, and Richie Kyle, his assistant, they're good coaches, and they're on a good, incrementally they're getting better in terms of their experiences, and they will have picked it apart as well, and they will hopefully have prepared Watford. It's just now down to the players to go and put that into action and play with a bit of confidence, but it's just that anxiety and that tension that can sometimes, just tie you up a little bit. So it's a little bit of an unknown, but yeah, obviously I've got my fingers crossed that they can just pull it out of the bag and get into that international break.
Yeah, well,
with a win.
Watford was my tip for the title, so look, what do I know? But I was just looking again. I mean, we haven't met since April 2017, where at Vicarage Road, when Watford took all 3 points in the final days of the David Moyes era, and we have to go back to 1999 for our last win at Vicarage Road, which was a 3-2 win, mainly thanks to 2 goals from Kevin Phillips, which of course we've got Watford to thank for passing them over for next to nothing. But I mean, will you be there on Saturday? Are you planning on getting along?
Yeah. And I'll be there. I'm in the press box every game, home and away for Watford. So yes, I will be there. And I always remember, back in the day, who was that striker that you had? Blonde hair. Is it Byrne? Is it John Byrne?
Oh, John Byrne. Yeah, 1992 Cup run. Yeah. Yeah,
that sort of that era. And I always remember Sunderland fans always noisy and loud and, boisterous, and it's always the way. And I just, I'm looking forward to seeing the Sunderland fans back at Vicarage Road. I hope it's a good away day, just not too good, obviously. And yeah, we will see. We'll see what happens. But there will certainly be an opportunity for Sunderland to have a good day if Watford continue to play the way that they have been. But I will be watching on from the press box, and as I go back out, I walk past the Sunderland fans to my left hand side. So I'll give them a nod. I'll give them a nod and a wave, and yeah. Hopefully, I'm not waving goodbye to another 3 points all the way back up to Sunderland. We will see.
Yeah, well, it's definitely set up for a good game anyway.
Yeah.
But on that note, it just leaves me to say thank you very much, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure, and all the best for the rest of the season.
Cheers, Chris, and all the best to everyone that listens. Take care.
Brilliant. Thanks again, and thanks again for everyone for listening. Keep a lookout, ROKER Report, for all the build-up ahead of the game against Watford of the weekend. But from us, bye for now.